Bridges are stronger when built from both sides.
Let's connect.
Let's connect. In the middle.
Hello and welcome to Building Bridges, a show on the Greensboro Television Network that highlights ways members of the public and members of the Greensboro Police Department can connect with each other. I'm your host, Sandra Hughes, and on today's show we're focusing on a problem that is affecting far too many teens and young adults in our community and all across the nation: dating violence. Some studies estimate that 1 in 3 adolescents in the U.S. is a victim of abuse from a dating partner, and that's all in a single year. You know, that's got to stop. Helping us understand the issue are 3 people who deal with teen dating violence through their chosen professions. So let me introduce them. Dr. Christine Murray, Associate Professor in the UNCG Counseling Department and Director of the Healthy Relationships Initiative. School Resource Officer A.T. Griffiths with the Greensboro Police Department, and Mr. Tony Casas, a wise guys educator and team leader. So welcome all of you to Building Bridges. And what we want to do is start by having you explain what your jobs are, each of you, and then we'll get into what this teen violence thing is all about, teen dating violence. Dr. Murray.
Well, thanks for having me here today. I'm a professor at UNCG in the Counseling Department, where we train counseling students. In particular, my area is couple and family counseling. And also I direct the Guilford County Healthy Relationships Initiative, and our mission is to promote happy, healthy, and safe relationships of all kinds in our community. Okay. Officer Griffiths.
Yes, ma'am. For the last 9 years, I've been the School Resource Officer at Page High School, where I'm assigned specifically to that school. There from the first bell in the morning till the end of the day. And actually, we work a lot of the after-duty events and stuff like that, and we try to get to know the kids and get in good with them.
And I hear the kids know you by
OG.
OG, and what,
Yes.
What does that mean?
Officer Griffiths.
Okay, that sounds great. Do you like having that familiarity with them?
Yes, I do, very much.
Great, okay. Now let's hear about your wise guys.
Well, thanks for having us, and great to be with friends here on the program, and thank you for highlighting this important issue that we deal with. I work with Children's Home Society of North Carolina, where most people know us through adoption and foster care, but we do have a family services education, so we do prevention work as well. My particular work deals with a program called the Wise Guys. It is a healthy masculinity, male responsibility program where we're in the middle schools and high schools trying to just educate males on what it means to be a healthy male, and all that comes with that.
Let's start with what teen dating violence is.
Well, you can think of teen dating violence as any type of abuse that happens in a relationship among teenagers, adolescents, in any sort of dating relationship. So they don't necessarily only have to be boyfriend, girlfriend, or have an official status, but any sort of romantic relationship between young people. And it also often applies as well. Dating violence, we will also would consider that among college students too. But it could be physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional, verbal, financial, also through technology.
See, we don't think about that. You know, when I think about young kids going out dating, I don't think about one hurting the other. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. A lot of it starts through social media. They'll actually try to degrade the person on social media, and then they'll actually it tends to more evolve into a physical and also a psychological violence.
That's surprising to me. Maybe I'm just from the old school. Is that what's happening here with me?
Well, I think it's just that technology introduces a whole new realm, and back in our day, we used to pass notes instead of text and so forth. And I agree with Officer OG, but sometimes it comes off as a smooth deal where guys I tend to see are trying to send encouraging messages at first, or something that just will kind of let the guard down for some of the young ladies that they deal with. And so while in the end it's always something that's destructive or divisive, a lot of times we're saying that some of them are kind of covert in how they do it, and then try to wean in attention and then
I want you to
sneak
get
in
specific.
something.
Tell me, we're talking about hitting, pushing, or
Just trying to even just get a kiss from a particular young person. Hey, I think you're cute. I've been eyeing you. I've been looking at you the last couple of weeks. Are you interested? And then, just kind of building up towards what it is that they're wanting to do. And a lot of times it's just maybe understanding that they have amongst their peers to say, man, I bet you I can do this. I don't think you can. Well, watch. And then in 2 weeks, they build up, and it's just to try to achieve something.
so we're talking about violence from all sides, physical, emotional, mental,
Yes.
all of that.
Correct.
Okay. Is this very prevalent?
Well, yeah, it is really, unfortunately, it's more common than we would like it to be. Any type of abuse, obviously, is a real tragedy for anybody who experiences that. Research tells us that women and girls between the ages of 16 and 24 are at the highest risk for any sort of intimate partner violence. So we know that young people in particular are at a real risk.
Now, you said partner violence. Does that mean that it's got to be like out on a date, or it's not just him over there and she over there and somehow they clash in the middle?
Well, when we're talking about dating violence, then we would be talking about a relationship that has some sort of romantic or dating component to it. But I'm sure that the school resource officer can attest that dating relationships in high school, middle school, even college are somewhat flexible today. They might be dating actually in the morning and then not be dating by the afternoon or for very brief periods of time. So even the definition of what a dating relationship probably has changed since we were kids.
What about, since you've been in the school system, do you see it changing, that relationship?
I do. In the beginning of the relationship, I see that a lot of romancing, I guess you could call it, or something like that. But then a lot of relationships turn into a controlling relationship, and they control it by means of force or psychological or any other type of like means that they could possibly use. And then it's about weekly where I have a parent come to me or a student come to me about a teen violence situation,
So
dating violence.
Does that mean it's growing?
I would say yes. I would say yes, it is. I mean, I would say just about weekly. Everybody comes, or not everybody, but people will come forward to me and express concerns about somebody or express concerns about themselves or in a relationship that they're in.
Oh.
Yeah, it is a growing trend, unfortunately. One of the websites that Dr. Murray and I go to a lot for statistical information is at loveisrespect.org. And the latest statistic is that 1.5 million teens across the U.S. are facing some kind of dating violence. So it is growing, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. So who's at risk? Who are these teens?
Well, anyone that's a teen. It just comes with the age, and it comes with the territory and just the things that you experience, the things that they're facing. And as Dr. Murray said earlier, the goal that we try to do as providers here in Greensboro is just to identify what is a healthy relationship. What does that look like? And what statistics also show is that a lot of the perpetrators do not have that understanding more often than not. And that's what's the catalyst to create the issue and causing it to grow.
So is there something going on in our society today that is promoting this more than maybe 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I do think teens are seeing a lot of representation of violence and abuse in the media, and so that certainly could be something that's influencing it. I think one of the things that's really makes teen dating violence in particular very complicated is that teenagers, just by virtue of their age and their lack of life experience, they don't have a lot of experience in relationships to know what's normal, what's healthy. And really, a lot of times we don't do a whole lot to educate them at early ages. So, hopefully they've seen good models of healthy relationships in their homes, but we know that that's not the case a lot of the time. So dating violence relationships really actually start out, as the others have mentioned, often looking a lot like other relationships, like healthy relationships. And so what happens is they can really start to develop feelings for each other, and then when signs of abuse start to come up, they don't really recognize it and they're not aware. And so I think that from a societal standpoint, I just think that for the most part, I don't think that we do a very good job of educating young people about healthy relationships in terms of
Can any of you, either of you or any one of you, give us an example of a little story about something that happened so that we can get a clear picture of what we're talking about?
Yeah, very sad situation. I was a freshman in a high school that had been dating by the time that I met and came to do the class. And in the end of the first class, he came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm dating somebody from another school that used to go here but transferred. She's a junior, and my parents are not happy with the situation. They think it's too long of a distance. I'm only able to get out there maybe every other weekend." Yeah. And so they suspected that there was some foul play involved. And the second week, he went ahead and said, "Well, we're sexually active. We're expecting a child." And so she had been about 5-6 months pregnant by that point. And so as our 10-week class unfolded, the child was born a little bit premature, and he came back to class and was excited about it, but had a concern that his father did not see a resemblance. And said, "Son, I really would recommend that you have a DNA test done." And so through the whole time, his parents were not in agreement with the relationship. They felt like there was some sort of emotional abuse that was taking place. And long story short, it was not his child. So he was devastated, understandably. And so the relationship was cut off. But it was just a reminder early on in my career doing this work that it does happen. And that as best you can, as best we can, to try to educate and protect, and just come from that perspective of not only enjoying what it means to have a good, healthy dating relationship, but also be protective of yourself and your partner as well.
So, Officer, you are around these young people all day long.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they come to you with problems or?
Yes, ma'am. There was a young lady that came to me this week. Her ex-boyfriend was trying to manipulate her and trying to get her back, but then it also threatened her and was trying to come on campus. He was no longer a student at the school that I'm at. He had actually sent some pretty nasty text messages to her over social media and on the phone. And it's very manipulating the way that sometimes that they actually try to control the other person. But that was just this week.
Wow. So social media is jumping in there, right?
Yes.
How prevalently?
Well, in terms of the different ways that can look, there's a lot of different ways they can use that. I've heard of people setting up fake social media profiles for somebody they were looking to abuse, definitely sending harassing messages. Even if somebody blocks their partner or former partner, they might have somebody else kind of spying on them through social media, sharing private or what was thought to be private messages or pictures. So there's a lot of different ways that social media can be, as well as just sort of bullying and harassment.
Goodness gracious, it's sort of overwhelming, isn't it?
Right.
It is.
It is.
A lot of folks will say, and about 2 years ago, I would say, like, well, it's the same thing that happened when we were in school or when we were growing up, just a little bit more magnified. That's not the truth. I mean, yes, it's a little bit more magnified because of the social media, but it's also more boldness out there, I think, because people can really hide behind fake accounts, fake identities, and they would do things that we wouldn't think about doing back in the day.
Wow.
So I think it's emboldened in a horrific way, really.
And you probably see it all day, don't you?
I quite often, yes, I do. They also will use social media to harm other people. For instance, they'll post a video of their girlfriend or boyfriend on Instagram or Facebook or wherever have you, depicting them in a bad way, or a private video or something like that was sent to them. And they'll actually post it on there for everybody to see, and it becomes quite a problem.
What can you do about that? I mean, I know there are probably a long list of things that can be done, and that's one of the things we want to talk about in just a minute, as to what can we do? What can a person who is not involved like you with children, I don't want to call them children, with young people all day long, what can we do about that? It's really, really interesting. So this is would you say this is a big problem?
I think this is a really big problem. I mean, the numbers tell us that this is happening at high rates, and one of the things that I've heard through research that I've done with survivors of past abuse is that, especially as these are their earliest experiences with dating, it can really set the stage for their experiences with relationships later on.
Okay. Is there any age in particular where it's just all over?
Well, I think, again, the research tells us between 16 and 24, for girls especially, are at high risk for victimization of dating violence.
Okay, well, we got to fix that, don't we? We have to fix that. This is such a prevalent topic, one that affects far too many of our young people. So stay with us. When we come back, we'll learn more about teen dating violence and how we can help our children, friends, and everybody have healthy relationships. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Building Bridges, a monthly show that brings together police and community members to help make our city safer. I'm your host, Sandra Hughes. Now, before the break, we learned a lot about teen dating violence, something that affects approximately 1 in 3 of our young people. That's a lot. It's more prevalent and has wider implications than you probably thought about. We're going to continue the conversation with our 3 guests today. Dr. Christine Murray, who is the Associate Professor in the UNCG Counseling Department and Director of the Healthy Relationships Initiative, School Resource Officer A.T. Griffiths with the Greensboro Police Department, and Mr. Tony Casas, Wise Guys Educator, Team Leader. I like that, Wise Guys, because basically what you're doing is trying to make guys wiser, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And my wife says it's the perfect job for you with that title.
Wise Guy. Okay, good. I want to start and ask you, Officer, is teen dating violence a crime?
Yes, it is. Both physically and anything on the internet, it is a crime. It's against the law, of course, to put hands on somebody else or to threaten somebody else in any manner. So yes, it is.
So suppose it's just verbal.
If it's a verbal threat, or if it's a
or if, let me make up a scenario. A young lady has a so-called boyfriend who constantly tells her what to do, and if she doesn't do this, and I guess it would be a threat. Is that a crime? That's
not so much of a crime, whereas like direct threats, whereas I'm going to hit you if you don't do this or something like that, that would be communicating a threat. That would be a crime. But if it's just a conversation where there's no direct threat, then that's not a crime.
But it also has consequences, though. Is that right?
That's right. And a lot of people who've experienced abuse will tell you that actually the emotional abuse or the verbal abuse can be a lot more difficult emotionally to recover from than physical abuse. So even when emotional abuse doesn't escalate to the level of being a crime, it's still important to take it seriously and understand that that is an abusive relationship.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what we do about all of this. Where do parents start out with this? What should they do?
Yeah, I think the first thing that parents should do, any parent of a teenager, hopefully even before your kids become teenagers, is educate yourself and learn about this and understand these issues, learn some of the signs to look for, understand that it can happen to anyone. Not to sound alarmist, but I think that it's important for people to understand this isn't limited to just a certain category of people, that abusive relationships really cut across any sort of demographic or any sort of characteristics.
And you had some stats. One of them was 1 in 3 young people will experience this.
That's right. And
that's a lot.
Another interesting statistic from Love is Respect, which Tony had mentioned, is that about 80% of parents think that teen dating violence isn't an issue.
Is not
an issue among teens. And so I think that at a societal level, at least, there's a real disconnect between how many people are experiencing these types of relationships and how many parents understand that it's a problem. And I think it's important to note, too, that even if your child directly doesn't experience abuse, they also could be affected by an abusive relationship if it's their friend. That can be a very upsetting situation, too.
Yeah.
Part of that study also said that 82% felt of the parents in that study that they could identify what the abusive signs were, and
they failed to identify them?
They felt that they could.
Oh, I see. see.
They felt that they could, and then once they did a study with them, only 42% were able to identify all the abuse signs. So not only are parents not really thinking it's not happening here, it's not in our district, not in our school,
Not in my house.
not in my house,
Yeah.
and I think I know, and then it winds up happening. You're like, how did I miss it?
Well, most teens don't even inform their parents of what's going on. They don't let their parents know. They don't let their parents into their world. They're kind of secretive about it.
I heard that young people are afraid to tell for fear they'll get it worse somehow.
That's one of the reasons why. I think a lot of it is fear, but I think also a lot of it is pride, that they think that they're grown and they can handle these type of things. That's one of the first things that I do is talk to these teenagers and ask them if their parents know about what's going on. And most of the time they'll say no, they don't.
So do you have to leave it like that? Can you go to the parents?
I can. I generally talk the student into going into the conversation with their parents, and I've actually had the parents come into my office at the school, then we'll talk. The three of us will talk about the relationship that they're in and what issues that they have.
What are some of the signs? Let's help parents out a little bit here. When your young person comes home from, let's say, high school, what should they look for that might be a sign that something's going on?
I think one of the key things to look for is any major changes in the teenager's behavior, their way of acting. So if they've always done really well in school and then all of a sudden their grades are slipping, or if they've always been a happy, sort of cheery person and spent time with their friends and then all of a sudden they're starting to become withdrawn. And that might be a sign that the teenager is kind of going through something, but they're not comfortable sharing it, but they're feeling the effects of it. In terms of other things to look for, though, definitely a partner who's very controlling. So if they're sending a lot of text messages or checking in with the person frequently, and always needs to know where they are, if they're trying to limit how much time they spend with their family or their friends, definitely the isolation, that can be a big one. Definitely bruises, things like that, if there is physical abuse going on. Yeah, it's very scary. But it's important to be looking for it, and kids might have they might have an excuse for it, and parents need to be a little bit of maybe kind of like a detective and be listening and say, okay, does this story make sense with how they're describing the bruise?
So is it okay for parents to just really get in there and find out, look through papers, look through pocketbooks, look through pockets?
Yes,
is it okay?
Yeah, I think that it's your child, it's your kid. Everybody has different rules at homes, different values and whatnot, but I would really recommend that parents be as engaged as they can be, even if your children are maybe going a little too far. Ultimately, I would want the kids to feel like there's care behind what they're trying to do.
I see.
And so push, and just know that as annoying as it might be, they're going to know, and you're showing them that you truly do love them and care and want to be as engaged as you can.
And I would think that that's especially true for social media.
Yes.
Yes.
Keep an eye on
Absolutely.
that. There's so many different social media outlets out there right now that they actually can erase, their message will erase after a certain amount of time, or if you read it, it'll erase itself automatically. But so they're going to have to be wise on how to check it and be open with their kids.
Even today, you've named a couple of websites or whatever that I never heard of before, or Snapchats
yeah.
and all kind of things that I wouldn't know to go into the computer to look for. How do you find out about those things?
Just talking to teenagers. Like I said, I spend most of my week with them every week, every day, and they keep me abreast of what's going on.
Well, that's a good idea. Maybe we should talk to him more and find out what's going on. What can a friend do, or someone who's an outsider? Let's say if I know a family and I can see something's not right, what's my responsibility for saying something to the parents there?
Well, I think that speaking up to the parents is probably a good idea if it seems like there's something going on. I think that it's important to treat those kind of conversations very sensitively, because people can be very reactive. They don't want to think about those things. They might be defensive and say, oh no, there's no way that this is going on. So, just kind of present the information in a way. I do want to say if there are any teenagers watching and they know of a friend who might be going through an abusive relationship, that they also can reach out for help too. That's a very difficult situation to be in, is if you have a friend who's in a relationship that you're concerned is unsafe. And so I think that I would encourage a teenager to talk to a trusted adult. It may or may not be the parent, it might be a school resource officer, it might be a teacher, but that type of situation is very difficult for a young person to deal with on their own. And so as much as possible, reach out for help from somebody who knows more.
So can an outsider do it anonymously? In other words, can I tell you about something I know without telling you who I am telling you?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. We often will get reports through, just somebody will leave a message or something like that on my voicemail, or somebody will call and say, I don't want to be known about this, but I do want to report that so-and-so is doing this in this relationship or something like that. So yes, it can be anonymous.
Could be like a tip line that y'all use from time to time.
Is there such a thing as a tip line for that?
Yeah, Love is Respect has a hotline, and they actually have a texting feature as well.
Say that again.
It's called Love is Respect. You can look at their website at loveisrespect.org, and so it's a national organization, and they have a hotline for teen dating violence that also has a chat option where people can reach out for help.
So do you like that? Would you recommend it?
I think it's a great resource, and we have some really good resources locally as well. Family Service of the Piedmont has a 24-hour crisis line with different numbers in Greensboro and High Point, where also there would be trained advocates to help talk through the situation. So I think that the more dangerous the situation is, so if there's physical violence involved or sexual violence or even threats of any sort of physical or sexual violence, it's important in those situations to really try to get some professional help.
After something is found out, is there counseling available to help that teen not get involved in that again?
Yes, absolutely. And just to piggyback on what we were just talking about, 33% of the folks that are facing dating violence are reporting it. So that number is way low. So a tip line, things like that, friends can just encourage and lift that number up so that we can reduce that and eventually do away with it. But yes, it's very important to talk through it with other folks and get help.
Okay, so you're saying that, let's say a female teen has been under this for a couple of years or more, you can help them get out of it or help them feel better. How?
Yeah, we have a lot of really great counselors in our community who work with adolescents, and if they're in college, they can go to their college or university counseling center. But I think counseling would be really helpful for teens and young people in that situation, because it's important to look at maybe what were some of the risk factors so that they can learn from that experience and hopefully experience healthier relationships moving forward.
So if something happens in what we call dating violence, do you ever have to arrest someone?
Yes, we do actually. A lot of times, if it does become physical, we have to arrest them for assault or communicating a threat. It does happen.
So do you do that right there at school, or how does that work?
We haven't had to do it at school, but as a police officer, we have to see domestic violence as far as teen violence and all that stuff. I haven't had to do it at school yet. A lot of the time, I'll talk to the other person, and they'll comply with what's going on, or even if the other person has to go further and take out a 50B protection order against them or something like that. That's actually had to happen also as well.
Okay. You were here not too long ago talking about domestic violence. Is this the same thing?
It is and it isn't. There's a lot of similar dynamics. When we talked the last time I was here about how these abusive relationships are really about power and control, that's the same in teen dating violence. But there's a lot of differences too. So especially the technology. But I think one thing too, when we're thinking about domestic violence, we often think about something that's happening in the household. A lot of times the violence and the abuse that's happening in teen relationships is happening in the community. So we've had participants in our research who in teen relationships were abused in a car, at the mall, at the club, at games, through technology. So because teens in their dating relationships are typically not living together. So it's really spills out into the community and happens in other places. So it's similar, but it's different.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it being the same thing. It almost sounds like it, doesn't it? But they're not married. What do you tell young guys in your program, first and foremost, about dating violence?
Dating violence, we say that it is a healthy male will never try to do anything to hurt a partner or somebody that they're in a relationship with. So healthy at all times. And our program, I love it because we build up on it. So we start with self-esteem. So we just evaluate and gauge where you're at. Because hurt people hurt people. And what we try to identify is let's see where you're at and try to make you whole if you're not whole. And then as we build your self-esteem, then we can get into what are your values going to be, and what are your decision-making skills going to look like, and what goals do you have. And then so once you have that built up, once you begin a dating relationship, you can be a little bit stronger and more secure in what is healthy, what is right, and then you can enter into that facet of life and be more productive, more encouraging rather than destructive.
Do you think they're listening to you?
They better. They better be listening. They are. And what's so encouraging about our work is that at every different levels, because I've worked with Christine at different functions through UNCG, and so a lot of the caretakers and practitioners that are coming out are doing a great job. I work closely with the resource officers at the schools that I'm at, and so it's a partnership, and together we just know that a lot of prevention is just going to put a big dent in this issue. And so it's great when the community can come together as a whole.
I love what the officer just said. They better. They better listen or they will reap the consequences.
Yes.
Thank you all very much for enlightening us about this, and hopefully getting us so that we're watching and letting people know if we see something that isn't quite right, or letting these young teens know they can come and tell us things that we hopefully can help them solve and get better with. We hope that you got some information today. We're more aware of this pressing issue that affects so many of our young people. More importantly, thank you for helping our young people choose safe, healthy relationships. For those of you watching, if you suspect a young person is involved in a destructive relationship, be a support system for them. Offer them help. Contact any of the organizations that you'll see on our screen. Thanks for watching us, and until next time, I'm Sandra Hughes. Be safe.
This show was funded in part by the Greensboro Police Foundation, an independent nonprofit organization whose mission is to enhance Greensboro's economic strength by promoting the safest city possible for its residents, workers, and visitors through support of the Greensboro Police Department. For more information about the Greensboro Police Foundation, visit www.greensboropolicefoundation.org.